Listen up.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
But yeah, that's right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Plaw, at Andrew Plaw Tech, live at PDQ headquarters. And I said, I could talk to anybody I want. Who do I want? Well, Bogdan, you know who I wanted. And I wanted my security buddy.
Chris?
No, you, Bogdan. I like a lot of security people, to be honest. But you have just a certain passion that I share as well. It's a little infectious, You get Bogdan going, you're going to hear some great stuff.
Yeah, just a little.
You like a rabbit hole, and I love a rabbit hole as well. Diving down, learning some new things. And I think for me, that's one of the most attractive things about security is you can never stop digging.
Basically.
It's an endless amount. I'm curious to hear what your experience was with security getting into it. Because I remember for me, whenever I was first working in more of a role where I was responsible for some security stuff, managing our SIM and trying to get control of our environment, it took me a long time of listening to a ton of podcasts, doing a bunch of stuff, checking out a lot of stuff that was on Twitter at the time, because there was a hot spot there for a while. There's a lot of great stuff. Just kind of getting a lay of what's real, what's not. You hear these big attacks, what are people actually saying, and identifying those voices that are worth listening to. But what was your background in security? Because that's kind of your specialty. I guess, I'll introduce you. My friend Bogdan, longtime security friend. We recently crossed paths when we acquired Coda, and you've been working at Coda for a long time. Can you tell us a little bit about that backstory, and then we'll get into just generically security?
I've been working at Coda from the very beginning, actually.
Yeah.
11
years, 12 years, was it?
Something like that, yeah. The hackathon where Coda got started was in 2015, if I recall correctly.
So, wow. So it started at a hackathon?
Yeah, it was actually at a project, a pre-accelerator. It's called Innovation Labs. And we just teamed up with Chris, Okta, and me, and we started the project.
Nice.
It was really fun, a really fun experience.
So was the project that you created what would ultimately be the Coda product?
Yeah, it started with a bit of a different idea. Chris has a ton of experience in the pen testing and security space, and he saw a need for a simpler way to basically scan and process vulnerability data, basically. Okay, so at that time we found our competitors. One of the competitors was Nessus, and we looked into their platform, and what they gave you basically is a big old XLS file with all the vulnerabilities. Here you go, good luck. And never mind the before part, when you have to configure all the targets and you have to know the intensity of the scan and what do you want to look for. And yeah. So what we wanted to do is to basically take that and make it just one click. Okay, I know what I have to scan, or I know my email address. I just click start, and then I get the vulnerabilities that I need to fix. So the initial idea was when you get a result, you get that automatically categorized and automatically prioritized. So basically, okay, you can disregard all this and just keep focus yourself on these three things, and you're going to be A-okay. And that didn't pan out exactly as we intended. When we started getting the first clients and stuff, we realized that they have different needs. Most of them actually required just different ways of visualizing the raw vulnerability data. And guess what? We did exactly that. That's how we got our first clients. It was just a need regarding reporting. And they liked us because we were a scrappy startup of 4 people, and we were willing to do anything to make their lives easier. So they were yeah, we can go to Tenable and request stuff like this. So here we are.
And I still see you have that very hands-on approach where you're really passionate about what you do. Do you feel a connection with how you're helping people or how you're empowering them to take control of their orgs? Because to me, security is such a challenging thing in the world for anyone to do. They can't do it alone. You can't just have security professionals doing it. You need to be empowering people across the org to do it. Are you connected with that, or are you just loving the geek side of it?
I'm loving both sides of it. I love one of the weird things I'm into is airplane accidents.
Me too, just a little bit. You kind of got me back into it a little bit.
And one of the things that I learned, which I love, is the Swiss cheese model. It's like you have multiple layers with like, you know how the Swiss cheese has holes?
Yep.
If you put multiple layers, then the chance of you having a hole that goes straight through them, gets lower and lower. And what I learned from Chris actually when we got started, and he explained to us like the concept and the reasoning of why are we doing this, what's the problem that we're actually solving, is that security is a process. It's not the thing that you just do, you tick it off, and then you go to the next thing. No, it's something that you have to do constantly, and everyone has to have that mindset. And what I found is it's useless to just tell people what to do if you don't tell them also why they have to do it. We actually had like colleagues or friends who are like younger than us who did amazing things after they understood like what's the purpose, right?
Yep. You have to know the why.
Exactly. You have to know the why. Like the reason we have, for example, in development, all these processes, like why do we write tests? Because you don't want your stuff to crash. Why don't you want your stuff to crash? Because then the client's going to be like, this is like useless. I can't use this.
Yep.
Especially when you have the client doing a trial, right? And assessing whether this product is something that they want to pay for.
Yeah.
If the first interaction is an error screen, they're going to be like, nope, not using that.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. A couple of things you just said I've been talking about in recent episodes. Helping people understand the why is going to get them to be more bought in. Also, test-driven development. I was just talking about it. There's a project in PowerShell that's sort of the accepted go-to, and it's so important. If you're going to be writing, PowerShell scripts internally and they're used as actual solutions, you want to have confidence that they're doing what you're intending them to do. Because maybe, with a product like you're working on, you're in it regularly. Sometimes you're going to write an automation or some kind of solution. You're not going to touch it for a year. You need documentation. You need tests so you can know as you make changes. You can feel confident that you're not going to break everything that your company maybe is relying on in a certain regard, which is awesome. But dude, you said some stuff before we started recording. And
I did?
You did. You said some, I don't know if they're inappropriate things, but,
Just
it makes me uncomfortable. And that is, I was talking about, hey, so, you like VS Code, right? And you're like, well, what's your answer? Do you use VS Code? Tell me about this.
I was the biggest fan of VS Code. Like when we started in college, I think it was code blocks, something like that. I just picked that up from high school because that's like what the Romanian curriculum teaches you. It sucks. And then I started using Visual Studio, like the big boy.
Yeah.
That was like, I would start Visual Studio when I left home to go to college, and I was walking around my laptop like this to have it booted up when I got to class.
Yeah, it's
like
a behemoth.
It's a behemoth. But I also dabbled a bit with Sublime.
Okay.
Sublime Text, like in the old good old days. When VS Code got to the market, I was amazed. I was amazed by the plugin ecosystem. I was amazed by how easy it is to write plugins, to configure stuff in JSON, and to have that like just a copy away when you move computers. That was amazing.
Yeah.
And I was the type of nerd who would have like Spotify inside VS Code, like everything inside VS Code. I used to have plugins that would integrate with Jira and with the CI/CD platforms that we were using, which were many because we went through all of them. And they would like when I would do a git push, I would just automatically get pinged in my VS Code like, hey, your pipeline started, your pipeline crashed. I would click something in VS Code and I would just get logs right then and there. So it's like I found that amazing, but then I realized that turning VS Code into Emacs is not a good idea. Like having the VS Code operating system.
It really is. It really is. Which is really cool in some ways, but yeah, it can be a bit too much. And then you pivoted. So what are you on now? You got to tell us.
Yeah. So I actually use NeoVim, and I'm living that terminal lifestyle. Like I have Spotify in my terminal now instead of VS Code. And why I switched that, like I used to think that Vim was this thing for like old people, right? Like, oh yeah, you learned Vim in like the 1800s when computers didn't have like interfaces and keyboards.
Yep.
So you just stuck with it. But like I got amazed. There's a guy on YouTube. It's called Primogen. And I just randomly stumbled upon one of his videos, and he does like a joke video, but he's like, the video is called something like how you can learn Vim motions in 5 minutes or something like that. And it's like, it's tongue in cheek. It's like 1st of April joke. But like, man, he moved so fast. He was just like moving functions around and like changing characters and typing stuff and then replacing it like 15 places at the same time. And I was like, dude, I want to learn that. Like, I knew multi-courses in VS Code and like find and replace and stuff. But like seeing this guy, and he also has a camera pointing at his keyboard. He didn't move his hands like at all. And I'm like, what is this black magic? I want to learn that. And then I realized that like NeoVim, which is Vim with Lua, like the 2020 version of Vim, is so configurable, so much more configurable than VS Code. This also means that when you update your plugins, like most of the time, half of the time, stuff breaks. And like you have to deal with that. But like the accomplishment feeling that you get when you finally make your crap work, like it's amazing.
I think that you're kind of speaking to the importance of having a tool set that works for you. For some people, VS Code will be that, but I think that there's so much to be said for learning the hotkeys for whatever you're doing. Because there's a lot of people that are trying to navigate around their code editor, clicking here, dragging, and this and that. You have to learn the hotkeys, and I think Vim allows you to really take that to the next level.
And it allows you because, and I'm going to sound like a Vim apologist here, but like, I promise I'm not a cultist. I don't try to convert people to Vim, but it's worth knowing at least the basics because you find it everywhere. Like every server will have it.
Yep.
Every Docker container you might end up in will have it. Even Windows has it nowadays. So like, it's a useful skill to have. And you can actually use like the Vim logic in websites. Like I don't know if you know this, but like, you can navigate GitHub with Vim keybinds. You can navigate YouTube with Vim keybinds.
Well, I'm using what are the keybinds that you'd be using?
Like you can scroll in the video, for example, with the HJKL. Or in GitHub issues, you can just scroll through the issues and like with the same keys.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is funny where like these patterns, they're kind of found in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And software type stuff. Go ahead.
So I was talking about the Vim, about the like the difference between Vim and like regular editors that I found is that it's not some keybinds that you just have to memorize. It's a grammar. It's a language. So like you're in normal mode, right? You want to insert some text, you just press I. This puts you into insert text, okay? Then you just hit escape. When you're by default in Vim, each key is a command. So you just need to understand the grammar and you can do stuff. For example, if you have a cursor at a word that you want to delete, you just press DW, which stands for delete word. It's going to delete that word.
That's fun.
Yeah.
There's also, I love the tools, free tools as well, which is kind of wild. WSL, another huge one where, for me, I was into security stuff and, you're following these CTFs. My work machine's a Windows box, so I want to have a VM up all the time. Well, with WSL, you're able to, I think there's a Kali Linux one you can even have, where it has like John the Ripper and all these other great tools you can use to start messing around with CTF
Metasploit
sites.
And all that.
Yeah. What do you think about those types of sites, the capture the flag kind of stuff?
We actually had a college course where the assignment was to do a CTF. And I think it's fun. I think it's like, it can be stressful, but you learn a ton of things. And you are basically forced to. They're more fun when you do them in teams, but like it's like a really cool experience. And I think everyone should at least try like a sample CTF or something because it's like a really great experience. And the amazement that you have when you crack a website or you do your first SQL injection, that's amazing.
It demystifies it. For me, with like security, I was like, well, you have to be doing straight up magic. But when you learn the tools that are actually used, it's like you just need to know what needs to be done. There's likely a tool that can do it.
Exactly.
Sometimes you have to write your own stuff here and there, but to do a lot of things, you don't need to be an absolute mastermind of the world.
Yeah.
You can get in where you fit, and there's a lot of great introductory stuff. Have you been to a B-Sides before?
I don't think so.
Oh, they're like smaller community-oriented security conferences. I think they have some good hands-on stuff. But I agree with you with the CTFs. It can be really helpful to go through it in some kind of event with some other people that you can collaborate with, bounce ideas off of. It's just generally a good thing to have a sounding board when you're new to something that can kind of make sure you stay on the right path. But so WSL, you mentioned it to me before we started recording. What are you using it for? How does it work into your workflow?
Well, I used to be like the biggest Windows development fan. I was trying to I develop with Windows or with Node.js directly on Windows, and then it got complicated. So when I got in college, I think it was the first year where WSL got released or something like that, and they made us use Linux. I was like, okay, I'm not installing Linux because I did that before and my Wi-Fi won't work. Okay. And when I saw I used to use like a VM, but it moved so slowly, like you couldn't do anything. When they brought up WSL, specifically WSL 2.
Yeah, 2 is way better.
Because 1 is actually, it's a really interesting project, but like it's so much work to maintain it. It's like impossible.
Yeah.
But like when WSL 2 got released, I was amazed that I could have basically the best of both worlds. So I could have Windows with Office and working Wi-Fi, but also Linux, where you can just copy install commands from the guides without doing like random.exe install.
Curl, you can just use it right there.
Yeah, exactly. So what I found WSL very useful for is development stuff, obviously, but also trying things out. Like you can just spin up a new WSL VM, like a Kali or like a Debian, something like that, and try stuff out. And if it doesn't work, then you just wipe it out and get a new one.
It's wild. I remember in the past a few years, maybe like 2018-ish, I was on a Windows machine running WSL, running Linux on my Windows machine, and then running PowerShell on Linux on my Windows machine. It's interesting to see how Microsoft has kind of changed over the years. I think they were maybe seen as a little bit different in the past, a little bit more closed garden. But it's been cool to see like something like PowerShell be open sourced and cross-platform now, and VS Code and WSL and all these tools that are GitHub. Oh yeah, that's like kind of the center of development universe. I know there's GitLab, but
I remember when I was in high school, like the sentiment was Microsoft is the enemy. Like I was like a Linux nerd because I got a ThinkPad then and everything worked. And then I got a real laptop. Like I got this old ThinkPad. Like I think it was 10 years old when I got it.
Wow.
But everything worked on it.
Yeah.
And with Linux, it was pretty snappy, right? Because that's like the main advantage. But when I got like a newer laptop, nothing worked on Linux, right? But before that, like on Reddit, like on the internet, everyone was like, oh my God, Microsoft is the enemy. Like you have to do open source everything. Like I get the sentiment, but like that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I remember when they did the Microsoft Loves Linux announcements, I think it was in 2009, 2010 or something like that, when Satya came as a CEO. I remember people going outrage on Reddit, like, no, this is embrace, extend, extinguish all over again, and stuff like that. But I feel like Microsoft has really changed their tune regarding open source software. Like they're one of the biggest contributors right now.
Yeah.
With all the open source, like the big open source projects.
Yeah, it's wild. If you're on a GitHub repository and you press period, you can open up a VS Code workspace just right in the browser.
I didn't know that you could press period. I know that you can just replace github.com with github.dev, but I didn't know the period trick.
And yeah, it's pretty slick. I think you have to be logged in to do it, and you get like a certain number of hours a month you can do it. But it's wild to think that like you don't even need VS Code installed. You can use VS Code in the browser. We're on computers right here that don't really belong to us. They're for recording stuff. We could open up GitHub right now and start coding together, not needing to install Git or anything, make commits. It's kind of a wild world we live in.
I used the remote server feature. I had my laptop.
Yes.
I had my laptop in the service.
Yeah.
And like for 2 weeks, I didn't have a laptop, but I have an Android, which does the DeX thing. So you can connect it to like a hub with a keyboard and mouse and a monitor, and it becomes basically like a desktop-like thing. The thing is, you can install like small things in a terminal. One of the things you can do is you can install the VS Code server, which brings you the interface. And on the other side, you can connect to any other machine. So I just whipped up on Azure VM. I put the VS Code server on there, and I was just developing on my phone.
I love that. Yeah, I've done a lot of pair programming in VS Code with some of, I can't remember the name of the pack.
The remote, that's amazing. That's like Google Docs for coding.
You can see the multiple cursors. You can allow them to type in your terminal with your variables. You can
see the plugins, like their plugins are using. That's
so
amazing.
Helpful. Pair programming is such a way to someone who like knows how to code a little bit. They can watch someone like you or someone who knows their hotkeys. Like, how do they even navigate code? For me, there was a huge breakthrough for whenever I had to stop using my mouse when I was writing. You know, like you got to know your controls and your arrow keys and your shifts and your control shifts and, you know, highlight, control
your
F12.
C,
F12. Developer
Shift
tool.
F12.
Ooh, what is Shift F12?
If you're in VS Code, F12 sends you to the definition.
Okay.
Shift F12, if you're on a definition, shows you the references, like where that function is used. And like regarding the mouse thing, people don't realize how much time you lose. Like, yeah, it's just a couple of seconds. Let me just select it. But like you do that like 50, 100, 200 times a day.
Yeah.
That adds up.
And it breaks your flow. Because that's ultimately like, when you get comfortable with a language or with doing something, you want to be in that flow state where things just go. And knowing your hotkeys and knowing how to navigate and the way you write code is going to enable you to do that way more better. And it makes you just feel good. It's just nice to be in that zone.
And also you don't need to learn them like by heart. You just hit Control-Shift-P and you type what you want to do. And guess what? The shortcut is going to pop up there.
Yep.
Try to remember that next time. Try to do it like 2-3 times. And then it's going to stick to your brain.
So are you on Windows day to day, which is WSL?
I was on Windows until like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then I switched to a Mac because I wanted to try. Chris kept pumping me up, like, you got to try Mac. It's so good. It's so seamless and stuff. I switched back to Linux like right before I switched to the Mac. Linux has advanced so much, and like the user experience is so good. But man, like some things still don't work. Like the lack of a full Office version still hurts, even in 2025. So yeah, I didn't have the option to pick Linux. So
Mac. I know a few devs that dual boot, but I like my MacBook as well. It's feels creative, but I kind of wish I did have a Windows machine at times. I need a Windows machine with a good battery is what I need. But
that was actually one of the reasons that I wanted the Mac as well, because my son was a year and a half old, and I kept working from like random places like the hospital or doctor's office or kindergarten or the grandparents, whatever. So I needed something that I could just throw in the backpack and make sure that I have battery. And like there were no good Windows on ARM laptops then, because like they just came out. There were no reviews. I didn't know what to get. And I was like, okay, just gonna pick a Mac. We'll see down the line. But I usually I just drop my Linux files from my Linux install on a Mac. I had to change a few stuff because Apple, but like after that, it mostly just worked because Vim.
So you like the terminal. What's your go-to language?
I am either JavaScript, TypeScript, or Python. It depends on what I have to do. If I have to do like something to automate stuff, because we have to do stuff like, I don't know, automate an API request to run every 5 seconds. And I'm going to go with Python for that because like it's easier to write. If I have to do something like a tool or something, this might be counterintuitive, but I like TypeScript because of the type validation. I know that there are other languages which might be better suited, like Go or Rust. I am looking into learning those, but like maybe when Noah starts school or something.
No, that's fun. Yeah, it's important to have like your sort of go-to base and tools in your tool belt that you're comfortable with, you like, that work for you. So you said TypeScript, because earlier you mentioned VS Code extensions. So I guess you're using TypeScript to create those.
Yeah, I played around some. Like I didn't do any big stuff, but I did some like small integrations with some API calls, like nothing too fancy, just plopping some JSON every 5 seconds in the editor.
What has been your favorite attack over the years? Or I don't know, favorite, anybody likes them, but the one that was most interesting to you? Because there's been a lot of interesting things in the security space over the past.
There has been, are we allowed to talk about CrowdStrike?
Why not? Hey, we're allowed to be honest.
No, I'm kidding. That's not an attack. But I remember when Log4j came out. It was like near Christmas or something.
Yep.
And I know that my phone lit up with messages from everyone on the team, and we were like, guys, we have to do something. Like, this is really bad. And we're like, what's going on? What's happening? Then Chris told us what the attack vector is, and I looked into it. We developed a small tool where you can upload a jar file, and we can tell you if that's vulnerable to Log4j or not. But the attack type, who thought that it's a good idea to have executable code via your logging system? And then I learned that that's actually a thing that Java developers assimilate. They assume that you can do stuff like this. And it's really interesting how your choice of language changes your expectations and your mindset. I wouldn't expect me to do something like that, but apparently in Java you can run classes starting from a string, because why not? So you usually don't do stuff like this. Or the thing that you can plug into your logging system with stuff that has access to private information. I get the understanding. The attack was something you can send a log message which requests data from a database, and the logging system would get that template characters. It would go and look up stuff in your database, and you could do data leakage, or you could actually tell it to execute commands, and you can do reverse shell or something like that. So yeah, I found that really, what the hell, because it was near Christmas, and we started we opened up our laptops to have something to check for it.
Yeah, those APTs, the advanced persistent threats, they love those holidays.
Yeah. That's the best time to hit, right?
Yeah,
when people are home.
I mean, it's just interesting how big business security is, but also the attacker side. It's really an economy. There's a lot of funding. There's a lot of exfiltration of data and money that funds these things that make them very valid threats that you really need to be aware of. And yeah, it's just, again, security is just such a broad problem that needs so much work. So many people need help with it. Mm-hmm. And really, to me, I like to emphasize to people that it's, especially sysadmins, you have a lot of opportunity to configure your environments to be secure. And guess what? Most people have not gone through that. But so many haven't.
But I think the actual problem is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So I listened to a podcast from Darknet Diaries, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the episodes was there was this guy who was a pen tester, and he was like, okay, let's do some stuff. Oh, look, I'm in your network. Oh, look, there's someone else in your network. And they were like, what? For how long? How long has he been there? I don't know, you just keep your logs for 6 months. So at least that. And what? If you don't know what to expect in terms of attacks, that leaves you like a dead duck. A dead duck? Is that the saying?
It's a saying. It is now.
Yeah, it is now. You're an open target because you don't know what to protect yourself from.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people don't have things configured, don't know where to query what is configured, have no insights into what's going on at all. So they're just kind of flying blind.
Exactly.
And that ignorance is bliss until you get attacked, and then you have no logs and you have no way, and you just got to call it a loss and reimage all your machines or whatever the case may be. But hey, are you familiar with the security features in Windows, or just PowerShell, I should say?
Because PowerShell, not really.
It's very, it has a lot of security features, especially when compared to, I don't know, Python. I won't list them all to you. Maybe afterwards we can go a little bit back. But it is kind of interesting to see how many security features are built into PowerShell to deal with obfuscated code, execution policies, script signing, because it's built-in script signing. I know Python, you need some extra stuff. The logging is way more extensive than Python. So if someone's going to be attacking your network, it's actually really great if they're using PowerShell, because it's all logged at a very deep level, assuming you have it configured. Many people don't until
it's not by default.
Retroactively. No, you have to configure it with GPOs, because sometimes you'll need to how much data do you want to retain? what endpoints do you want to allow to connect to others for like lateral movement. So you need to be a little hands-on, which I think a lot of people just kind of do the quick start. You know how that goes. Like if it's easy to get started and it's not the secure method, a lot of people are just going to go that way. But it was interesting to me because I haven't heard it echoed too much or seen in too many other places, because there is a bunch of security features. Because a lot of attackers use PowerShell. It's on the box. But if you have it configured, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's good for you to get insights. But again, most people aren't knowing where to look. So it's just flying blind. And I was in that area too, where you don't really know. You're just kind of like hoping you don't get attacked one day. And, you see all these stories. You're
fingers crossed.
This could be us. And maybe you're not the boss who makes the choices and your boss isn't pushing on you. But I think there's room for everybody in their org to take ownership of how things go and push security forward.
Yeah.
If you notice you're kind of missing in one area, bring it up in a meeting. Don't just accept that we're just going to be flying blind. Let them make a choice, because security is about risk and they can make choices. But
yeah, and if you hear stuff like, I know a company got attacked and you're thinking like, hey, this could be us. Like, don't just keep it for yourself. Go up the chain and say, hey, should we check for this? Like, do we use Log4j anywhere? Or do we use CrowdStrike anywhere?
Yep.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, don't just put it under the rug and hope for the best, because that's never going to work.
And plus, you'll feel better. Like, you want to be connected with your work and also the community. And if you're like seeing these things that you could be doing, it's kind of weird to just read them and not do anything with it. You want to learn by doing.
This is a funny thing, like regarding the perspective that you have on your own security posture. We've had clients. I've been in call with clients for Detect who are trying out Detect, and there are like two big categories. There are some clients who only want to see like green, like, hey, why isn't this green?
Yeah.
Like, I want to make it green. I don't care. Like, just let me accept the risk on everything and I'm going to be fine. I'm scared of those. And there are clients who want to see everything red. There are clients who can scan something with Detect and then go, okay, so Detect saw this, but this is like a production server. I know it's like a low importance CVE, but I want that high. Like, I want that to like blow up all the alarms when it pops up. And you have like these two people. I know Tara is very like OCD on like having all the environment be very squeaky clean.
Yep.
And I feel like that's a mindset you should have. It can get stressful, but like you said, once you know what your issues are, you get that peace of mind that, hey, I know that we're exposed on this. Like, at least if something happens, like publicly, I don't know, a high visibility exploit comes up with a certain CV that you have discovered in your environment, you know how to handle that. You know the exact device and application which is vulnerable, and you can just go and fix it or shut it off, something like that.
Yep. I love that. And there's just so many parallels with PowerShell. It's like, if you're going to be working in this space and have a career, take ownership of it. If you're in an org, you have to take ownership of your position, look to empower others, look to find communities, find resources, find podcasts, whatever it is that works for you, and run with it. Because it's just, you're not going to be able to make progress, at least, from my perspective. You're not going to be able to make a lot of good progress if you're not taking ownership. And sometimes with security, you got to have conversations with different teams. You have to be open to that. You can't just lay down the law and expect everyone to just follow you. Sometimes you got to meet them in the middle, because it is a business, and businesses make risk-based decisions. And sometimes that won't always satisfy the security nerd inside us, but that's the world that we live in. And anyone out there fighting the good fight, trying to secure your orgs when it's an uphill stream both ways, my hat tips off to you. Thanks for putting in the good work, because the better security posture the world is, the less bad stuff we have going on, the less money we have being exfiltrated to these orgs that can do some bad things. So,
yep.
And I think that kind of reminds me of another thing I want to talk to you about, which is educating people. So internally here, we've done a we've done a PowerShell user group internally, but also a security group. We're just trying to build more of that security, more ideas changing between people, but also you educate people in security outside of work. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I actually, after we finished college, it's like, if you want, you can actually go and teach. So I went and held some courses on networking. I held courses on CCNA, if you know the the Cisco certification.
Network administrator.
Yeah. I went through the Cisco certification and held courses in an academy that we have inside the college. But I also teach people to learn front end so that they can get hired as like junior front end developers. And like one of the most basic things is I know you teach basic web development, right? So you have someone who's like a junior and makes a full stack application, like front end, back end database and stuff like that. And you see them dropping the API key or the database request straight in the front end. And you're like, no, that's not how you do it. And let me tell you why. Because if you don't explain the security stuff like from the very beginning, it's very hard to just patch it on, right? Because if it's not designed well, and this is a thing that I'm really scared of with like vibe coding engineers.
I was just about to ask about vibe coding. Yep.
Yeah, like when I heard like when this whole movement got started and that Twitter guy announced his SaaS service on Twitter, and everyone was like ripping his API keys because they were stuck in the front end package. I was like, okay, so like went through all of the people that I had lessons with, and I'm like, see, this is why that boring stuff that I was telling you about is important, because otherwise you're going to get stuck with a bill of $20,000 from AWS or OpenAI because you left your API key in the open.
Yeah, you have to know how to program. You need to know how to think. And AI can unlock more, but you can't just go with it. You got to know what you're looking for. You need to be able to think. You need to have put in some time learning.
Yeah, you have to use it as a co-pilot. Like, he's in the right-hand seat. He has the map. He can guide you. Like, hey, take a left here, take a right here. But like, you still have the wheel, right? If it tells you to take a left in a lake, you have to use your eyes to not do that.
Yep. But you can get more out of those AI tools if you actually do spend that time invested. So like with learning something like PowerShell, or actually investing time into learning security properly.
Yeah, they can help a lot in explaining concepts, and that's a great thing to do. But roll up your sleeves and put some hands-on work when you try to apply those. Like, don't let the AI write the code for you. It's good for like one-off scripts, but always review the code yourself. If you don't understand it, take that snippet of code, put it back in ChatGPT, ask it, what does this do? Get through me line by line. So it helps you explain, it helps you understand what the code is doing. So you're not just trying random stuff in your organization.
Powerful stuff. Curious to see where that goes. AI is going to make its way into some different things, hopefully for better.
I feel it's going to be like a bubble, like the .com thing. It's going to change a lot of stuff. Like a lot of scammers already started appearing. We're going to find ways to deal with those. It's going to be a change for sure. But after like, I think a couple of years, we're going to know what works and what doesn't. And I think this is why it's important, like you said, to educate ourselves and what AI is good for and what AI is not. So, for example, AI is not good at doing very exact things. Try asking ChatGPT how many R's are in strawberry.
Oh, I've done that.
But it's very good at brainstorming, like a sounding board at 3 a.m. when nobody else is around.
Yep.
Or if you want to explain stuff, like simplify stuff. Or if you want the AI to give you more resources, or if you want to explore options. So for example, if you look, I don't know, let's say you want to write the script and you don't know what language to do it in, you can ask ChatGPT, okay, I have to do this. What is the best tool for me to do that? Or I want to do testing in PowerShell. How should I do that? How should I do that? How should I learn it? I've seen people use GPT for writing tests. I've also seen an interesting use case where people would write the tests themselves, then ask GPT to write the code to make those tests pass. I don't know how good it works. I didn't get to try it yet, but it's something to think about. Like, it can be very useful. It's like a hammer. It can be very useful. It can also be very bad.
Yeah. I think I've seen it used, if you use it wisely with documentation, like say you write some kind of open source project and you want to you can give it some ideas and it can give you some structure that my brain doesn't structure things very good. I'm like, you're going to get one long ramble. but it can help sort of organize that into more readable stuff. I think I've seen some GitHub repositories that were sort of inspired by it, but the people still put the time in to actually make sure that the information was accurate, catered to them. But,
yeah.
nice formatting.
We, for example, we do incident reports, like when something happens, like, I don't know, production fails or something like that. And like, I write the report, I just throw off my ramblings there. But like, some of those things may make sense just for me. So I usually take that paragraph or two, throw it to ChatGPT, and I'm like, okay, what info do I need to add? How can I reformulate this so like anybody can understand what I'm saying, what I'm trying to say? Is the tone of this paragraph good? Like, I don't want to be like blaming anyone. I want to blame the process. So that way we can find solutions. Because if you blame someone, like what you're going to do?
Yep.
But if you blame the process, then we have something to work with.
1,000,000%. And that's such a great, important thing that hopefully you have that at work. Hopefully you don't live in a blame culture where you're afraid of making a mistake, because the truth is it really is a system at the end of the day. If your system has a single point of failure and that's you making a choice in a moment when you're responding to a incident, you might need to readdress that system and not just take full burden, because humans are going to make mistakes. It's a guarantee, whether it's clicking a phishing link or typing in the wrong command and hitting save. You need safeguards. And
And this is another thing that AI and automation can help with. I am of the mentality that you need guardrails everywhere you can.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you are not allowed to make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And this gets back into what we talked at the beginning, like to understand why we're doing the things that we're doing. Like, explain to people, okay, we have these restrictions that, guess what, we implemented with ChatGPT, I don't know, API things or GPO rules, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we implemented these because, and have those written down so that nobody forgets them and everybody understands. Like, for example, we have an automated rollback procedure. Why do we have that? Because we used to do rollbacks manually, and we had this huge incident, which manual rollbacks have worked for like 10 years. From this incident on, they didn't work. So we're going to scrap that. We're going to automate it. And this is why we do it. Have a link to like the incident, which explains the whole story.
Yep.
I think I deviated a bit, but yeah.
It's all good stuff. It's all stuff that for some people have never heard this kind of thing before. Like, you're introducing the concept of blame. Everyone thinks it's all on them. They hear these stories about, I took down the whole server room and it was the worst day of my life and all this kind of thing. But the reality is, mature orgs, people that you want to be working for, understand that a culture of blame is not the best way to succeed, not the best way to implement security, because security, sometimes you got to do things and there could be a chance something breaks. If you're super afraid of ever doing anything, you can't make change. You have to have that safety. You built in, you can build it yourself. You can find, some cultural improvements. You can write some more testing to kind of give you some safeguards, but it is such an important thing with really so much of IT, dev stuff as well.
You don't want to have a load-bearing Mac Mini.
No.
So.
Oh, no.
You know the story.
No, I don't know. Is this yours?
No, it's Twitter's actually. So when Twitter got like their first years, they had a Mac Mini in the office, and that was basically the the bastion for them to connect to all the production servers. And like one day, some new guy came in and he was looking for like stuff to do, and he saw that Mac Mini, and he asked like a lead developer or something, hey, what's this? Like, is anybody using it? And he was like, yeah, just plug it out, see if anybody else. Everybody lost production access for like 2 weeks, and they now call that the load-bearing Mac Mini.
I missed that story. Holy crap.
You have to look into it. It's really funny.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. If your whole business is an XS database or an Excel sheet, you got problems.
Excel is not the database.
No, it is not. Well, great chatting with you, my friend. It always is fun. I think we share a lot of the same passion, and it's cool to see that in you and the importance of education and security. And I think we're going to geek out about some plane stuff after this, because I had a close run-in on my fly-in here. I don't know if I told you yet.
No.
Well, let's just say we were landing. We were almost about to touch down, and then all of a sudden we pull up and hit the full thrust, and it just, we go up. I'm like, what the heck just happened? I can't see out the front of the plane, mind you. Obviously, I'm not in the pilot seat.
Oh, you're not?
No, I tried. They actually handcuffed me and tackled me, so it didn't work out. No, but it turns out there was a plane on the runway that was like going too slow that we were going to hit. And so they told us that, they had to divert us, and then we had to just circle around, and 7 minutes later, but I love those ATC calls. There's a couple of really good YouTubers that do some cool breakdowns where they're like, as a professional 747 pilot,
Mentor pilot.
Yep.
And air crash investigations and green dots.
Yep.
I have a bunch of them.
I know you have a channel at work in our Slack where what's it called? Like Bogdan's Random Thoughts?
Bogdan's Random Stuff, because I didn't want to spam random.
Yeah. Because, I like that. I go there a lot, and we'll read through some of your stuff and dive into some fun rabbit holes. If you find yourself out there passionate about stuff, nerding out about stuff, geeking out, hey, you're in the right profession. A lot of other people out there. Bogdan, people loved you. They had a great time listening. They want to connect more. They want to get more of that Bogdan vibe. Are you on the World Wide Web? Are you public? Are you private? Where can we find you if we want a little bit more?
I have a GitHub website, like a blog that I'm trying to keep. And that's about it.
Awesome. I think you're also on the PDQ Discord.
Yeah. Ping me up.
Yep. Hang them up. Check out the tech channel. And we'll maybe have to do some more content in the future. And I look forward to our next internal security meeting. And hey, if you're out there, you're trying to drive a culture of security. If you're the only one, cool. Find an ally who's really willing to help you and start building something. Start taking steps. You'll learn by teaching. You'll have a good process. Give one message to the people. What do you want to tell them? One thing, it could be any topic in the world. Always
be curious. Like, there's no magic, especially in IT. Like, you have to know, like, I have a friend who has this saying, like, it's just bits. You have to just understand how they flip.
Yeah.
So, like, there's no magic. Be curious. Try to understand what you're doing. If something seems magic to you, just open up the box, because, hey, presto, it's not magic. It's just mashed up code.
Yep. There's very few things that really kind of strike me as magic, and the ones that do, it's like they've, these very novel 0-day attacks where the APTs have invested a ton of time, or nation state actors, whatever it is. But still, it's all just a series of steps that are put together.
Yeah.
Just like everything in life, just like amazing careers, just like amazing solutions that people write. It all started somewhere, and you got to find your next step and then take it. So, hey, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. If you're walking, if you're driving, whatever you're doing, do it safe. Thank you for listening. We're here every single Monday, over 3 years straight. Join us at PowerShell Wednesdays every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the PDQ Discord, discord.gg/PDQ. Hit us up online. If you ever have any questions, reach out. I always love making new friends, especially if you're 45 minutes into a pod. I mean, I feel like we're friends already, but feel free to, make that introduction. I love meeting new people. Thank you out there. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. Just have fun. Take care, everybody. Lucas Allman, welcome to the Summit Sessions. We've hung out a lot this week.
We have.
I've sort of, you were one of those people who early on was proactive in the Slack, reaching out to people.
Right.
Connecting authentically, which I really always love to see.
And
it's been awesome to get to know you this week and sort of see your journey. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from?
I'm from Canada. I'm from just outside London, Ontario.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you find yourself here at the PowerShell Summit for the first time.
Right.
What brings you here? How'd you hear about it? Why would you come to a PowerShell conference?
Well, you see, I listen to a podcast. It's a great podcast. Comes out every Monday, weekly. And I'll tell you what, I was listening to this podcast because I love PowerShell, because I've been on a PowerShell journey for a long time. I'm constantly looking for more information, more things to learn. And the thing I kept picking up on through the stories you were telling, through the bar sessions, all those things, was just the different dynamic of being at a conference like Summit. The hallway conversations, the people you talk to, the connections you make. And what was interesting was I kept seeing it as this cool thing people get to do. And it took a while before, the more I heard the stories of the people who are attending, the more I realized, oh, that's a thing I can do. I probably just need to ask. And so I asked at work, and I brought a coworker with me, and the rest is history. And it's been surreal to have all these household PowerShell names that are a part of these stories that I've heard, that are a part of the history of PowerShell, that I've read articles that they've written or watched videos that they've made. And now I'm rubbing elbows with them. I'm in the same room with them and
getting compliments.
Yeah,
real,
I'm glad you said it, so I didn't have to be the first one to say it. Getting compliments.
Jason Helmick,
Yes. Getting up and doing a lightning demo, especially first time attendee. It obviously it was nerve-wracking. Getting up and talking in front of people is nerve-wracking. It's also something I enjoy doing.
And you're good at it too.
Yeah, I
it's a skill
appreciate
set,
it. I appreciate it. It's a skill set that I know I have, and so I knew from everything that I had heard from Andrew Pla and others that it's a great way to get up, get in front of everybody. And you know what? It's almost cheating, because if you're a speaker, you've got a closed room with limited seating. Very few. Jeffrey Snover gets to talk to everybody. Keynote gets to talk to everybody. The speakers don't get the full room, but lightning demos, you get the full room. You're presenting in front of 200 people.
Yep.
That was a cool experience.
Huge 3 projectors. Like,
yeah.
It was
chaotic and like lightning fast, switching between people, but it was a lot of fun.
We just talked to Asmar, who was talking about a very helpful Lightning demo. It talked about using PSD1 files for configuration.
That does sound helpful.
That sounds really helpful. And that was yours. And I think it's, you certainly have great delivery skills. I mean, which is awesome. And I think it's important for people to find their strengths and play to those. Not everyone's going to have those super, it's going to take a little bit more work for them to get there.
Yep.
And it's cool that we've certainly identified a strength that you seem to know, but now everyone's kind of on the same page. I'm very, very curious. There's some people who I talk to, I'm like, okay, they have enough figured out, and they have the runway and the support and the confidence in themselves to kind of take the risk. And, and you're one of those folks who I'm very eager to see what your journey plays out like.
Shucks, Andrew Pla.
Shucks, indeed. And I saw you in a different talk today about internal user groups. And, you're talking about the community at large, but also we talked a bit about how you are trying to drive change internally and sort of make some cultural changes around automation and empowering others.
Right.
Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So I kind of look at it as it's sort of a universal story, I feel, with automation groups. People recognize the value of automation. It's why we keep doing this. And someone will come along and have a very bright idea. They'll say, let's get a group of people together, and they will make automations. And there are plenty of people in the company who need some kind of automation made. Those are the folks that'll do it. And so that's what they do. They make a bunch of automations. And then they make a bunch more automations. And while they're doing that, they're maintaining the ones that they've already made. And the math continues until you hit a critical point where you can't make anything new because you're spending all your time maintaining the old. And then you add more people to the team and try to expand horizontally, and eventually it's just too much, and budget cuts come around, and now there's no more automation team, but there are still automations. And then they get, they live out there, and they kind of get neglected. So what I envision is an idea where, and I got this from a book, and I wish that I could remember the name of the author, but it is a book that I believe the title is Strategy Guide for Automation. And it's a short book, but what I took away from it was you kind of need to change how ownership is thought about when it comes to automations. So you're an application owner. You own the ecosystem around your application. So you have to be aware of the server. Maybe you're not exactly the server administrator, but you're not hands off.
Yeah.
You need to be aware of the database. Maybe you're not the DBA, but you can't be hands off. You've got maybe some network requirements. You got to know about those. But if somebody makes an automation for you, why should that not be a pillar of your responsibility? And so kind of the way that you look at it then is, okay, if this team is helping you make an automation or even making it for you, they have an obligation and you have an obligation to teach you where it is, what it's doing, where the logs are, what's the basic troubleshooting, give you some ownership over it so that the entire ownership of maintenance and support doesn't fall to the team that's trying to move on and make new things. So what does that take to get right in an organization? I think the number one first step is you got to bring up that knowledge base. You got to make sure everybody in the organization has the required knowledge to start that journey of ownership. And so for me, that's going to start in a couple of ways. I want to start something small just with the people that I know that are doing these things, doing automations. And let's get the knowledge share going. Let's make sure we all know the same things. We're not keeping anything to ourselves. There's no secrets. Let's learn. Let's grow from each other. Then let's spread that knowledge out to the people that maybe aren't making the automations, but need the automations and have the technical ability to own them if only they had a little bit of that extra insight. So it's a long journey, but I think it definitely starts with more knowledge sharing.
Yep. Sounds like you're sort of trying to create the guardrails to guide everyone in the right direction.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, help you stumble upon success rather than failure. Mm-hmm. Now, I have a question, like internally, have you had successes, or you sort of respected where you could kind of leverage some of that trust that you've earned to drive some of this change and get people to get bought in?
Yeah, I think so. Some of this desired change in direction, it actually came from a conversation with a manager of mine. I asked him very pointedly, how do I protect my job? When I look at what I do, you can look at people, they own this product and they're responsible for this and they're responsible for this. But if you kind of look from 30,000 feet in the air at my job, it's just automation. There isn't a lot of specificity to that. So when it comes time to make things a little bit more lean, let's say, how do I make sure that it's known what my value is, what the value is that I'm providing to the company? And through this conversation, basically, what his response was, if I had somebody coming to me and they said, I'm doing automations, but also here's my roadmap for how we get more value out of what I do and what other people can do, that's a valuable contributor that I want to keep around to see that vision through. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to achieve.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you have a lot of next steps in terms of that. Now, for your growth journey and maybe thinking of things that some challenges that you want to take on next, sort of what's next for you, kind of walking away from Summit, not relating to the internal workings that we just talked about?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the big journeys we've been on that isn't like looking at this roadmap of how do we do automation and how do we organize it, has started with myself. I started not with how can I make other people in this company think differently about automation. I started with how do I think differently about automation? How do I keep better track of my scripts? How do I make sure that I'm reusing my code, not rewriting my code? I'm sure we can all relate that, you wrote it. You've done this before. You're looking at the same sites. The links in Google are purple. You've wrote this before. If only you could find it. And so one of those first steps on that journey was, of course, using GitHub. And so what I started to do was to try to make best practices for myself and start to follow those. And along that journey, I brought my team with me. There's a few of us doing the same thing. So I said, here's what I'm doing. We should do this together and that kind of thing. So we've gotten to a point now where we are doing some configuration as code. We are dipping our toes into the water for pipelines, GitHub Actions, that kind of thing. So next steps coming home from Summit, I've seen a lot of talks this week about pipelines, about deployment, about the DevOps part of the PowerShell and DevOps Global Summit, and it's inspired me. It's given me ideas. I think the next few steps is tightening up some of the processes around configuration as code, but definitely. And, I think a lot of people can relate that this is on the to-do list. This is on the next step list. Testing. So I think that's probably the next steps when I go home.
If I could add another challenge to that list.
Please, just pile them on,
I'd
Andrew.
love to have you join a PowerShell Wednesday sometime and present.
I would be happy to join a PowerShell Wednesday and present.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, it's so great. There's so many new friendships and new journeers that I'm really bought into, and yours is most certainly one of those. I look forward to going, several years from now, kind of reflecting back on, gosh, do you remember 2025? Oh,
just a babe.
We were so young.
Yes.
Young and hopeful. And, well, one message for people out there who have yet to engage in the community, who maybe are listening and feeling like, oh, that world that they live in isn't for me, or I don't belong maybe. What do you have to say to them after having your first time at a PowerShell conference?
Sure. Well, I'll answer the question by maybe speaking to myself 6 months ago, because the truth is coming to Summit doesn't need to be the first step into the community.
For sure.
Now, for me, that was kind of my first step into the community, but that's not a necessity. That's not the way it needed to be. That's just kind of the way the chips fell. There are so many different avenues to start these conversations with people in the PowerShell community, and everybody wants those conversations to happen. The whole community is a very welcoming place. They want people asking questions. They want people asking why. They want people contributing. So I think number one is find a place that works for you. It works for your workflow. Maybe it's a popular Discord channel where people chat about all things PowerShell.
I've heard of that.
Maybe it's even just finding a repository on GitHub and reading through the what do you need from me in terms of contributions to this. A lot of times, and I've heard you say this on the podcast, even just documentation. It goes a long way. We all know documentation is important. It's gold. Good documentation is gold, and yet it gets neglected so often. So find your favorite module, find your favorite piece of code, find a typo, commit.
Yes.
If you've never done a pull request before, I'm still very early in my Git journey. These are still scary things. Do that. Those can be your first steps, and you're going to make friendships. You're going to make connections with people. You're going to learn things. Doesn't need to be Summit. But also, you should try to come to Summit because this is great.
And I'm glad to hear that because I've told a lot of people to come. So when I see them, I'm like, I really hope it's great for you.
Yeah.
Well, Lucas, I appreciate that so much. I appreciate you sharing your perspective. And in these Summit sessions, I've interviewed a bunch of people, and a lot of topics have been repeated in slightly different ways from many different people's eyes. And I hope that if you're out there listening, you can see some of those commonalities, and maybe you've connected some dots. And if enough people are saying it, a lot of these times people are giving me similar answers. I'm not guiding them in that direction. That's just, we've all kind of seen it to be true. So we communicate that in those words that we have.
Absolutely.
Lucas, we'll talk soon.
I hope so.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.